Welcome back to Patriotism Unhinged. I want to tell you about something that I think is going to be very interesting to you. I've decided after reading the comments, a lot of people have suggested that we talk about a lot of the witnesses that were killed and how they were killed and why they were killed. And so it'll take some time, so it'll have to be a number of videos. And then you may have some questions that you'll be sending in on those, which we'll have to answer. I wanted to do this because when I started looking back over it, I realized that some of this stuff is almost unbelievable. Richard Belzer, in his book Hit List, covered this stuff tremendously, covered it. I've studied his stuff, and when you go online and you hit the name of a person, say Grant Stockdale, for example, not a common person you would think about, then you'll see a lot of information on Grant Stockdale, and you will see how close he was to Kennedy and so forth. And so by starting with the book Hit List and then branching off into who the people were and their backgrounds and the associated reasons that they had to be killed, it will give you more of an understanding that if we can give you 100 of these, for example, that would convince most people that one of the things you're going to hear is that somebody had a London insurance company do a study on a certain number of people dying within a certain period of time. And it said that the odds against that were 1 in 10,000 trillion. 10,000 trillion. Now, we know that can't happen. That alone would tell the world that this is all a bunch of horse shit. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to bring up, I've said it a few times, but I don't think I made the serious point about how the Central Intelligence Agency and other intelligence agencies used items to kill people. Now, obviously, they shot people. Obviously, they threw a lot of people out of windows. They have run people off the road considerable amount of times. Take, for example, Lee Bowers. Lee Bowers died about 2.5 years after the assassination. At the time, he was involved in what they call dubious accident. Lee Bowers, of course, told Mark Lane that he told him quite a bit, but for the purposes of this explanation, he told Mark Lane that he had seen some sort of a flash. Something went off that drew his attention to the fence. He mentions that twice in his interview with Mark Lane. We have a picture of a Remington Fireball 221 going off, being shot by the researcher Jim Scott. That would indicate quite a splash to get Lee Bowers' attention. He was potentially targeted because of that, because that never really got out. That picture wasn't available until probably 5 years ago. So moving forward, and as I said, it was about 2.5 years. He was involved in an accident. I recently found out that he didn't die at the accident. They got him to the hospital still alive, and he told the doctors at the hospital that he had stopped to have at a diner and had coffee just before, and he thought that as he was starting to drive, that he might have been somebody had put something in his drink. He was drugged. And so that would be an indication that Even though he died after that, he at least had time to tell what he thought was happening to him. There are lots of little things that I think are very important that people don't know about. And I don't call that minutia. I call that evidence because that is on the hospital records. I wanted to say that they have drugs, they have all kinds of ways of killing people, but they also secretly developed a substance that they wanted to use on Castro. We've spoken about this before, if you watched the previous videos. However, there is always something new that comes up. And when it does, I like to give it to you. And I found out that the actual way they did it was to inject the mice with cancer, give it time to grow within the mice, tumors. Then they would take the tumors, kill the mice, take the tumors out, and the tumors would be used in some sort of a fashion along with other chemicals that they had been working on, that it could be administered to somebody, and then within a month, most people would die within a month. And this, of course, is because it depended on how many times they got x-rayed. Because the more times they got x-rayed, it would metastasize fast, And so that now we know is exactly how they did that. Now, we also want to tell you about the fact that before that all happened, and we don't know exactly when this started, but we do know that the Central Intelligence Agency worked very hard to come up with some sort of an application that would be able to give somebody a heart attack that the coroner wouldn't be able to tell that was anything other than a normal heart attack, a natural occurrence. So with that, in the book, and you can look this up if you like, in the book, Conversations with the Crow, Robert Trumbull Crowley, talking to Gregory Douglas, makes the comments that was used on Pope John Paul I. If you remember, Pope John Paul became Pope, and within the first 30 days, he went to sleep one night, and he died in his sleep from a heart attack. Now, according to Robert the Crow, Trumbull Crowley, the reason they killed him was because for years and years, the mafia had some connection with the Vatican Bank in Mobiliari. The CIA was able to launder money through the Vatican Bank. This was going to be a problem because in the conclave, before the Pope was determined who was going to be the Pope, there was a lot of talk among the cardinals. There was a lot of talk that the finances of the Vatican were really, really way out of whack. There was a lot of talk about it. They made a statement that whoever became Pope, they wanted them to promise that they would get outside accountants to come in and find out what was going on. This, of course, would have been devastating to both the mafia and to the Central Intelligence Agency because the money that they were bringing in on drugs was how they were able to finance all of these underhanded operations. I'm not telling you that you got to believe this. I'm just telling you where you can go to hear it, where I heard it, and make your own decision. I'll tell you that most intelligence agencies are somewhat connected with each other, but they have their lines in the sand. It's my belief that the British intelligence, MI6, is probably as good or maybe better than ours. I also believe that the Japanese, the Russians, and the French have excellent intelligence groups. When Mr. Kennedy was assassinated, the very next day, the president of France flew into Washington. After the funeral, he had a meeting with the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, McCone, and LBJ, at which time he told him that his French intelligence had told him there were 2 Corsicans involved in the killing. That gives a pause to the fact that this was all known about in advance all over Europe, probably. There was a person in England who had called into his paper that he had just gotten some information, and that was maybe an hour or 2 before I'm not sure of the time, but it was right before the actual assassination. If a writer in a paper would know over there, I'm sure MI6 knew. There's another case with MI6 where a very, very high general by the name of Alan Brooke, for some reason, they wanted him to be killed. MI6 did. And so with that, Alan Dulles had a meeting with Jack Kennedy, and he told him that they had approached him about this and that they were going to help MI6. And Kennedy went nuts. He said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. They did it anyway. And we know that because in our interview with James Fowles, he said, yeah, we went around them. We went around them. And so I'm not saying James Fowles was the killer of that general. I'm just saying that he knew about that. And he offered as a side note when we were speaking of it that they went around him. That knowing that, when we go through the hit list, there'll be some that appear to be natural causes, but because of where these people stood in a potential investigation and a congressional hearing and so forth, they didn't want to take chances. And so a number of them were given either the cancer thing, but most of them had the heart attack. And I believe we're going to find out that 5 people in the FBI direct assistant to J. Edgar Hoover, two men like that, and then the person in charge of fingerprinting and the person in charge of forensics in general, and maybe one other, all died from heart attacks within a period of 6 months. And that has some really weird statistics behind it too. And moving ahead, we are going to tell you about a lot of these things, but the videos may be a little longer because we're going to insert videos, probably the same videos that I watched years ago, to come to the conclusions that I came to. And with that, of course, there's a lot of good ones from the 9-hour rendition of The Men Who Killed Kennedy. However, there is also excellent material from Mark Lane, and we're going to show you those kinds of things. And then, like I said before, sometimes when you look it up in Hit List and you first read it from Belzer, then you go on the internet, then you go on AI. And so you start to get more and more and more the deeper you go. You know, those videos are not just dead to fill in time. They're to give you a better understanding. Remember, you're the jury. You're the jury, and enough people see these things and realize how important it is that after all these years and all these people studying this thing, and you yourself now know from just what I've shown you in the last 5 months, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so as we continue on, I mean, a person who would still say, if they ever watched any of these and watched them and looked at the evidence, would say, oh, I don't believe none of that, would have to have a very low IQ. I think you'll enjoy this because in a lot of ways it's going to give even the people that have been looking at it for a long time new, credible information. Thank you.